In the heart of a vast land where the red soil glowed like molten clay under the sun, there lay a remote African village cradled by forests dense with ancient trees and rivers that shimmered with a silver sheen. The air was thick with the scent of wildflowers and wet earth, carrying whispers of the wind that danced through the leaves like secrets waiting to be told. Birds of every hue perched on branches, their songs echoing across the hills, and the distant call of drums marked the rhythms of life in the village. This was a place where every villager knew the story of the land, its magic and its guardians, passed down from ancestors whose spirits were said to rest within the soil itself. Among the villagers lived a young woman named Amara, whose presence was as gentle as the morning sun yet carried a strength that could not be denied. Her skin shone with a warm glow, kissed by the red dust of the land, and her eyes reflected the depth of the rivers she had grown beside. From an early age, Amara had displayed a remarkable connection to nature. Flowers seemed to bloom brighter where she walked, animals approached without fear, and the wind often whispered as if recognizing her presence. She was known for her kindness, always tending to the sick, aiding the elderly with chores and sharing her harvest with those in need. But she was also courageous, unafraid to speak the truth, defend the weak and walk paths others feared. The villagers adored her, yet not all hearts were filled with goodwill. Among them jealousy festered like a slow poison. Some villagers, intimidated by Amara's wisdom and the respect she commanded, whispered behind closed doors. They claimed her influence was unnatural, her charm too powerful for a simple village girl, and some even dared to call her a witch. Fear, a force that twisted reason, took hold in their minds. They plotted quietly, hoping to diminish her, to remind the village that no one should stand above them. Among the jealous, murmurs circulated about how Amara's presence threatened their positions, their pride and the delicate balance of their egos. Yet the forest, the rivers and the very soil seemed to have a memory of their own. Whispers, carried through rustling leaves and flowing water, spoke of a different truth. The earth, it was said, honored pure spirits, those whose hearts were untainted by greed or cruelty. Those who sought to harm the innocent would find themselves undone, for the land remembered every act of justice and injustice alike. Elders often recounted tales around evening fires, cautioning that the earth had long arms and a patient memory. To harm the righteous, they said, is to awaken what sleeps beneath. Though many dismissed these stories as old wives' tales, the wind seemed to carry them with a resonance that could not be ignored. Amara herself, despite her youth, had heard these whispers and felt their pulse in her veins. The soil beneath her feet seemed alive, almost responsive, and when she walked among the fields or bathed in the river, she felt a deep connection, as though the land itself guided her steps. Her bond was not just spiritual but tangible. Seeds she planted grew with remarkable vigor, and plants near her home flourished beyond expectation. Even on the harshest days when the sun blazed and the wind scorched, her garden remained a haven of life. Villagers often noted that storms would veer away from her house, lightning sparing the trees surrounding her. It was a quiet magic, subtle yet undeniable, and it drew awe, admiration and fear in equal measure. It was this rare combination of kindness, courage and inexplicable connection to the earth that stirred envy in the hearts of those who could not see beyond themselves. They began to plot, weaving plans like spiders spinning webs, hoping to trap her in ways that would shake her spirit. Some spoke of deceitful tricks, others of physical harm, and a few whispered of more arcane methods, believing that if they could sever her bond with the soil, her influence would wither. But what they did not realize was that the very land Amara walked on would not allow her destruction without bearing witness and, perhaps, exacting its own measure of justice. As the village prepared for another day with children running through the fields, women pounding grain and men tending the livestock, a subtle tension lingered beneath the surface. The sun rose over the red earth, highlighting every furrow and leaf, and the wind carried not just the warmth of the morning but the quiet anticipation of what was to come. The villagers moved about their routines unaware that the seeds of envy, once planted, were being watched by forces they could neither see nor understand. And so Amara walked among them, unaware that her strength and purity had already drawn both admiration and peril. The rivers sparkled at her passing and flowers turned their faces to her, acknowledging her presence. The soil beneath her feet, rich and sacred, seemed to hum softly, as if preparing for a day when it would remember her name and honor her spirit in ways that would echo far beyond the village. The whispers grew louder in the trees, in the streams, and in the rustling of every leaf. Magic, patience and justice were awake, and Amara, innocent and brave, would soon witness how the land responds to those who dare to wrong the righteous. Thus the stage was set, a village of beauty and danger, a young woman whose spirit was intertwined with the earth, and enemies whose jealousy would unknowingly awaken a power far greater than their cruelty. The story of Amara, the girl who walked with the soil in her heart, had begun, and even the wind seemed to carry a promise. Injustice would not go unanswered, for the earth itself honors the pure. The village, usually alive with chatter and rhythm, had begun to carry a different tension, one as palpable as the heat rising from the red soil. Whispers followed Amara wherever she went. At first, they were quiet mutterings behind the market stalls, small suspicions from neighbors who envied her vigor, her wisdom, or the respect she garnered from the elders. But soon the whispers grew bolder. Jealous villagers, stung by their own inadequacies, began weaving tales that painted Amara not as a blessing but as a threat. Some claimed she had too much influence over the crops, suggesting she could manipulate nature to favor herself. Others murmured that she had too many friends, and that these alliances were no ordinary friendships but a web of spells designed to control the village. The rumors, like seeds scattered by a restless wind, began to root themselves in the minds of those who had always feared what they could not control. Among the jealous, a handful of voices grew louder and more daring. They gathered in the shadows of the trees, whispering of strategies, conjuring lies with practiced precision. False accusations of witchcraft were laid carefully on the lips of the more gullible villagers, and each accusation gained weight through repetition and fear. Every innocent act by Amara was twisted in the telling. When she helped a sick child, some said she had cursed others to make that child well. When she sang by the river to calm the water for the fishermen, whispers spread that she commanded spirits in secret. The conspirators knew they could not confront her openly. Her courage and the villagers' trust in her made that impossible. Instead, they sought deception and cunning, planning a trap that would isolate her from her allies and expose her to shame. The trap was simple in design but cruel in intent. A false message arrived, delivered by a nervous villager paid to serve the scheme. It spoke of a sick elder in need of Amara's aid, drawing her away from the safety of her home and the watchful eyes of those who truly respected her. The conspirators had arranged for her path to wind near the river's bend, a spot where the shadows of trees cast long, misleading silhouettes on the ground. They thought to frighten her, to confuse her, and ultimately to corner her into admitting to the fabricated accusations. Every detail was calculated, from the placement of suspicious objects to the timing of the villagers lying in wait, hoping that fear would crack the strength of the young woman they sought to harm. Yet Amara moved with the wisdom of someone who had listened to the earth for years. Her eyes, reflecting the clarity of the river and the depth of the forests, scanned every shadow and movement along her path. She sensed a discord, subtle but undeniable, a disturbance in the wind and the rustling leaves that whispered caution. Though the conspirators thought themselves clever, they had underestimated the connection she shared with the land. The earth beneath her feet seemed to pulse softly, guiding her steps away from immediate danger and heightening her awareness. She noted the hesitant glances of the supposed sick elder's messenger, the unnatural stillness of the forest in one stretch, and the too perfect arrangement of stones near the riverbank. All of it spoke to deception, and her heart did not falter. Even as fear crept into the edges of her consciousness, Amara remained resolute. She reminded herself that courage was not the absence of fear but the mastery of it. With every cautious step, she balanced trust with vigilance, her mind attuned to the whispers of the earth that had always been her ally. Her inner strength radiated outward, a silent barrier against malice. Those who plotted against her might have believed in the power of rumor, shadows, and intimidation, but they had not accounted for her wisdom, her awareness, or the quiet force of nature that stood beside her. By the time she reached the bend near the river, where the conspirators hoped to ensnare her, Amara was prepared. Her posture was firm, her gaze unwavering, and her heart steady. She knew the villagers' envy and the trap's cruel design were no match for the resilience she had cultivated all her life. And though the conspirators watched from the shadows, believing themselves to be masters of the moment, they could not touch the quiet defiance that flowed through her veins. The tension was palpable, the air thick with anticipation, yet the young woman's bravery remained unbroken. Even in the face of deceit, Amara's courage shone as brightly as the red soil beneath her feet, a promise that no false accusation or envious plot could ever soil her spirit. The conspirators, confident in their cruelty, moved swiftly as the sun dipped behind the forested hills, casting long, menacing shadows across the village. Amara, despite her awareness and courage, could not escape the sudden force of their attack. Strong hands held her, and her struggles, fierce though they were, could not match the coordinated malice of those determined to end her spirit. Fear flared briefly in her chest, but it was quickly replaced by the unwavering strength she had carried all her life. Even in the face of imminent pain, her eyes held a calm defiance that unnerved her attackers. The earth beneath them, red and fertile, seemed almost to pulse with anticipation. As the villains carried out their dreadful plan, they forced Amara to the ground. The red soil, rich with life and history, eagerly drank her blood as it flowed from the wounds they inflicted. Each drop soaked into the earth, mingling with the dust and the roots, as though the land itself were taking note of the injustice. The villagers who had been coerced into watching from the shadows felt a chill creep over them. Even the forest seemed to respond, the trees shivering in the cold wind that had suddenly risen, carrying a scent of iron and sorrow. Amara's heart raced, not with fear, but with the awareness that her essence, her courage, and her connection to the natural world were not easily extinguished. Every breath she took was a testament to her defiance, each pulse of her blood a message to the earth that cruelty would not go unpunished. The wind howled through the branches above, bending them as if whispering warnings to the wrongdoers. Birds, usually silent in the fading light, shrieked sharply, fluttering above in chaotic patterns. Even the rivers, murmuring softly nearby, seemed to quicken their flow, carrying her essence throughout the land. Though wounded, Amara remained composed, drawing on a deep well of inner strength. Her thoughts were of justice, of the balance she had long sought to maintain in her village, and of the children who looked up to her. Pain coursed through her body, but it did not break her spirit. She imagined the blood merging with the soil, each drop seeding a promise that the cruelty she endured would awaken a power far greater than those who sought to harm her. Her vision, though blurred by pain, seemed to pierce beyond the immediate moment. She saw the forest, the hills, the flowing rivers, all reacting to her suffering, as though acknowledging her courage and recording every injustice committed against her. Tears streamed down her face, mingling with the dirt and blood, yet her expression held neither despair nor surrender. Instead, it bore a quiet dignity, a recognition that her life, even when threatened, was intertwined with something eternal, the spirit of the earth that nurtured and witnessed her existence. Every gasp of breath was a defiance of the violence imposed upon her, a silent protest that cruelty could not erase her essence. In those final moments, the conspirators believed they had triumphed, their faces smug with the illusion of victory. Yet even as Amara's strength waned, the red soil beneath her seemed to shiver with life. Tiny tremors ran through the earth, a subtle but unmistakable acknowledgement that the sacrifice they inflicted would not go unnoticed. The wind carried whispers of protest through the forest, the leaves quivering as though echoing her courage, and the rivers glimmered faintly, reflecting a light that no blade or bloodshed could diminish. Though wounded and seemingly broken, Amara's presence endured, her connection to the soil and the spirits unbroken. In the quiet aftermath of the act, the village held its breath, unaware that the land itself had absorbed her courage, her grief, and her promise of retribution. Her blood had touched the earth, but the essence of her being, fierce and unyielding, remained, a seed waiting to rise, a story waiting to unfold, and a power that would not be denied. The moment Amara's blood seeped into the fertile soil, the earth itself seemed to awaken. At first it was subtle, a faint glow that pulsed beneath the red dirt, like the heartbeat of the land acknowledging her sacrifice. Villagers, hesitant and fearful, gathered at the edges of the clearing, their eyes widening in disbelief. The soil shimmered softly, reflecting the fading light of the sun, and for a heartbeat, even the skeptics felt a chill, as if the air itself had become alive. From the crimson-stained ground, shoots began to emerge, vibrant, verdant, and impossibly fast-growing. Flowers that had never been seen in the village burst into bloom, their petals sparkling as if dusted with dew made of light. Their colors were vivid beyond imagination. Deep crimsons, molten golds, and luminous purples that swirled with a brilliance no human hand could create. The fragrance was intoxicating, carrying the scent of rain-soaked earth, wild blossoms, and something ancient and powerful that seemed to whisper secrets to anyone who dared listen. The villagers shivered, half in awe, half in fear, recognizing that this was no ordinary occurrence. Animals from the surrounding forest approached cautiously, drawn to the energy that pulsed from the soil. Birds alighted on low branches, singing melodies that seemed unfamiliar yet hauntingly beautiful, harmonizing in a tune that spoke of rebirth and justice. Small creatures, foxes and deer crept closer to the blood-soaked earth, their eyes reflecting the supernatural glow emanating from where Amara had fallen. Even the wind seemed to pause, swirling gently around the clearing in a protective dance, carrying faint whispers of gratitude, acknowledgement, and ancient power. The villagers felt the change in the air. Some stumbled backward, muttering prayers or crossing themselves, unable to reconcile what they were seeing with their understanding of the world. Others, unable to deny the evidence of their senses, knelt on the ground, feeling the vibrations beneath their feet, the hum of life returning in ways that were both subtle and overwhelming. The energy was tangible, like a current running through every root, blade of grass and grain of soil in the clearing. Each pulse seemed to echo Amara's courage, her enduring spirit mingling with the life force of the earth. Even the trees reacted. Their branches stretched higher, leaves rustling as though in applause, and new buds formed at impossible speed. Moss climbed the trunks like a gentle wave, softening the edges of the forest with a green embrace. Flowers sprouted along the riverbank, spreading light in all directions, reflecting the glow that had emerged from the soil. The river itself seemed to shimmer as the water caught the light, flowing like liquid crystal, carrying hints of the same vibrant energy downstream. Every element of the village and its surroundings had become a participant in the awakening, a symphony of nature acknowledging what had been done, honoring a life so unjustly threatened. Some villagers dared to approach the transformed soil. Their hands trembled as they reached out, feeling warmth and a gentle vibration that was almost like a heartbeat. They sensed the soil's intelligence, its response to injustice, and a deep understanding that it had been touched by something sacred. Whispers spread quickly. The earth had received her sacrifice and was ready to act, to protect and to restore balance. Even the rival conspirators who had orchestrated Amara's suffering felt unease creep into their hearts as their feet pressed against the energized ground. A seed of fear, and recognition of their wrongdoing, was planted in them as surely as life had been planted in the soil. The air carried another change, subtle but undeniable. It was the sense that something extraordinary was about to unfold, a force larger than any villager's understanding, yet intimate in its connection to Amara. The soil itself had become a vessel, a guardian and a herald of rebirth. Shadows danced unnaturally around the clearing, moving with a rhythm that seemed alive, as if reflecting the pulse of Amara's courage now intertwined with the land. Flowers bent slightly toward certain villagers, animals lingered in protective circles, and the wind whispered her name softly, Amara. Amara, a signal that the woman herself, though wounded, had not been defeated. By nightfall, the villagers could not ignore the miraculous signs. The soil continued to glow faintly, faint embers of light dotting the earth, promising renewal. The once quiet clearing had become a sacred space, a reminder that injustice against the pure-hearted is never ignored, and that nature itself would rise to restore balance. Those who had doubted now whispered of ancestral magic, of spirits inhabiting the land, and of the impossibility of erasing what was meant to endure. The soil's response was no longer subtle, it was a declaration. Life cannot be suppressed by cruelty, and the spirit of a brave heart will always find a way to grow. From the blood-soaked soil, a subtle quiver began, barely perceptible at first, like the earth itself shivering in anticipation. The villagers leaned forward, unsure whether to step closer or flee. The glow that had emanated from the ground intensified, bathing the clearing in a soft, otherworldly light. Tiny shoots of green twisted and intertwined, rising higher and higher, as if the earth was weaving together a tapestry of life. Each tendril pulsed with energy, moving not randomly but with purpose, directed by some unseen force, some consciousness hidden within the soil. As the villagers watched, rooted in a mixture of awe and terror, the sprouts began to coalesce. Leaves merged, stems thickened, and the soil itself seemed to mold around a shape gradually forming, pushing upward and outward. It was neither entirely plant nor entirely human, yet it bore the unmistakable aura of Amara. Her spirit, her essence, seemed to flow into the growing figure, intertwining with the natural elements. The red soil molded into the curves of a body, while the green shoots and delicate flowers spiraled like garments around her form, creating a living dress that shimmered with the glow of life and magic. A faint breeze stirred the edges of this nascent figure, and with it came the scent of the forest after rain, earthy, sweet, and invigorating. The villagers gasped audibly, stepping back as fear and wonder gripped them simultaneously. The figure's head became discernible, the outline of a face emerging from the soil, delicate yet unmistakably Amara's. The flowers that adorned her shoulders shimmered, as though reflecting the first light of dawn, and tiny leaves unfurled from her arms like living extensions of her being. Even the hair, or what resembled hair, grew from blossoms and vines, cascading in a living wave that glimmered with dew-like sparkles. Amara's eyes opened slowly, shining with a calm strength that belied the violence she had endured. They reflected the sun, the sky, and the crimson of the blood that had nourished the earth. Her gaze swept across the villagers, meeting the eyes of the jealous conspirators first. Fear gripped their hearts as they realized the impossible was not only happening but that it was Amara herself, risen from what they had thought was her end. Whispers erupted, "It cannot be, she is alive, she is the earth itself." Some villagers fell to their knees, unable to comprehend the blending of human spirit and natural magic before them. The air seemed to pulse with energy. Birds circled overhead, their wings catching the golden light of the emerging figure, and animals that had lingered near the soil now approached with a respectful caution, as if acknowledging Amara's return. Even the wind seemed to carry her presence, rustling the leaves and bending the flowers in a gentle bow. Each movement of the soil-formed figure was fluid and natural, a perfect harmony of life and spirit, demonstrating that Amara's essence had been woven inseparably with the land. The villagers' fear grew as they noticed the figure beginning to speak, though no sound escaped her lips. Her voice resonated through the earth itself, a vibration felt in the bones of all present. It was both a warning and a revelation. Cruelty could never suppress a heart so pure. The sprouts and flowers responded, blooming further with each pulse of her unspoken voice, a living testament to her courage and the magic that protected her. Those who had harmed Amara were rooted to the spot, unable to avert their gaze. The soil beneath them seemed to tremble slightly, almost as if acknowledging the injustice and preparing to deliver consequence. Even the air felt charged, thick with the energy of awakening, judgment, and rebirth. The villagers understood instinctively that what they were witnessing transcended human comprehension. It was the manifestation of nature itself taking a stand, using Amara's spirit as its vessel. By the time the figure fully emerged, standing tall and radiant, the clearing was bathed in a soft, golden light. Amara, reborn from the soil, embodied both human resilience and the unstoppable force of nature. Every flower, every leaf, every glowing tendril of her form radiated power, beauty, and unyielding justice. The villagers gasped in unison, their awe mingling with fear, knowing that they had witnessed a miracle, one that would forever remain etched in the memory of their village. The earth trembled gently beneath the feet of the villagers as Amara stepped forward, fully formed from the soil that had claimed her life moments before. She was radiant, not merely in appearance but in presence, as if every particle of light in the clearing had been gathered to illuminate her path. The vibrant red soil clung to her feet, mingling with the green shoots that had woven into her form, creating a seamless connection between her and the earth itself. Her eyes, deep and unwavering, reflected wisdom far beyond her years, knowledge of injustice, of love, and of the power inherent in courage. The villagers froze, sensing the shift in energy. Those who had plotted against her paled as fear took root in their hearts. No words were necessary to convey the gravity of the moment. Amara's very presence radiated authority. Even the elders, who had witnessed countless rites and traditions, felt their breath catch as they observed the sheer force of her aura. Her hair, a cascade of blossoms and vines, swayed as if moved by its own will, shimmering in hues of emerald, gold, and crimson. It caught the sunlight, refracting it into tiny rays that danced across the villagers' faces, illuminating both awe and guilt. With each step, the flowers and grass beneath her feet seemed to rise slightly, bending as though bowing to acknowledge her rebirth. The wind carried her scent, a mix of earth, rain, and wildflowers, filling the air with a heady, grounding perfume that reinforced her connection to the land. Animals emerged from the nearby forest, circling around her, not in fear but in respect, acknowledging the sacredness of her being. Birds perched on branches above her, singing a gentle, harmonious tune that complemented the natural rhythm she exuded. Amara's gaze fell upon the conspirators, the villagers who had attempted to harm her, and the weight of her presence alone forced them to their knees. Their hands instinctively shielded their eyes from her radiance, not out of modesty but fear of the justice she embodied. It was as though the earth itself had imbued her with the authority to command, to correct wrongs, and to restore balance. Every pulse of her being resonated through the soil, sending tremors through the clearing, a silent but undeniable message that cruelty could not withstand the harmony of strength and purity. Despite her power, there was no malice in her demeanor. Amara's aura exuded calm confidence, a tempered strength that carried both mercy and justice. Villagers who had feared her wrath sensed that she would not harm those who sought redemption, but neither would she tolerate further cruelty. The air shimmered subtly as though time itself slowed to witness the full magnitude of her return. Even the trees seemed to lean closer, their leaves whispering softly, embracing the miracle that had unfolded among them. She moved through the village square with a grace that seemed almost divine, each step measured yet fluid, commanding attention without arrogance. Her presence was magnetic, drawing villagers near, including those who had been complicit in her suffering. They could feel the hum of energy emanating from her, a living testament to resilience and harmony. Children gazed in wide-eyed wonder, sensing the magic that flowed through her veins, their small hands reaching instinctively toward her in innocent reverence. Amara raised her hands slightly, and the soil beneath her responded, sprouts of green unfurling, blossoms blooming in patterns that mirrored the intricate designs of her spirit. The villagers noticed that each movement she made left a mark of life, a trail of renewal signifying not vengeance, but balance restored. Her aura radiated strength not only in physical presence but in moral authority, an embodiment of the truth that no act of cruelty could extinguish courage or the bond between a pure spirit and the earth. Even the wind seemed to bend to her will, carrying with it a gentle melody of approval. It whispered through the village, rustling the leaves, stirring the waters of nearby streams, and bringing with it the scent of blossoms and fertile soil. Her voice, when she spoke, resonated like the echoes of mountains and rivers, carrying weight and clarity that compelled attention. Each word seemed to ripple through the land, touching every soul present with the awareness of her power and the inevitability of justice. By the time Amara had fully traversed the clearing, the villagers had come to a silent understanding. They could not harm her, nor could they ignore the lessons her return embodied. Her radiance, her strength, and her connection to the earth had transformed the village itself, creating an aura of respect, fear, and awe that would endure for generations. Every glance, every breath, every heartbeat in that moment acknowledged her rebirth, not merely as a woman, but as a living symbol of resilience, justice, and the unbreakable bond between spirit and soil. As she finally paused, the sunlight gleamed on the blossoms woven into her hair, the red soil under her feet, and the emerald leaves swirling gently around her, casting a radiant glow across the village. Amara stood there, fully returned, fully empowered, and fully alive, a testament to the truth that courage, purity, and the strength of one heart could reshape the world itself. Amara's gaze swept over the faces of those who had conspired against her, her eyes steady and unyielding. The villagers who had once laughed at her strength or plotted her demise now shrank back, their bravado replaced by a tremor of fear. Even the elders who had remained neutral felt a ripple of unease. The air around her seemed charged, vibrating with an energy that was both living and commanding, as though the very essence of the earth had risen to stand beside her. She moved toward the conspirators, each step purposeful, leaving a trail of blooming flowers and fresh greenery in her wake. The soil beneath them seemed to pulse, drawing their attention downward. Tiny shoots erupted from the ground near their feet, curling around ankles, tripping them in subtle but undeniable ways, reminding them that nature itself would no longer tolerate their cruelty. The wind picked up, whistling sharply through the branches, carrying whispers of judgment and echoes of Amara's courage. Leaves swirled around the villains' heads, brushing against their faces like cold, invisible hands warning of consequences to come. Birds, which had long observed the village from the safety of the trees, began to circle above, their calls loud and piercing. Their feathers glimmered with dew, reflecting light in a pattern that almost seemed deliberate, forming arcs and signals that drew attention to the wrongs committed. Even the animals that had quietly hidden in fear now approached the edge of the clearing, eyes bright, instincts alert, as if recognizing Amara as the rightful protector of the land. A fox emerged, weaving between the feet of the guilty, its gaze piercing, and then a deer stepped forward, lowering its head, signifying both caution and the recognition of a natural balance restored. Amara's voice rang out, calm but commanding, carrying the weight of truth and the authority of her rebirth. "You believed that envy and malice could harm the spirit that honors the earth," she said, her words weaving through the wind. "But you were mistaken. The soil, the trees, and the rivers are witnesses to every deed, and they speak now through me." Her words seemed to ripple across the clearing, stirring the leaves and sending small branches quivering as if nature itself agreed with her judgment. The conspirators began to feel subtle shifts around them. The ground beneath their feet grew uneven, roots rising just enough to unbalance their stance. Their shadows stretched unnaturally in the light, flickering like warnings across the red soil. Whispers, faint at first, grew louder, the murmurs of the forest carrying tales of justice long overdue, echoing the pain they had inflicted. The smell of damp earth and blossoms intensified, filling their senses with both awe and dread. Fear overtook their bravado. One by one they lowered their heads, unable to meet Amara's unwavering gaze. Memories of their malice surfaced unbidden, times they had lied, betrayed, or plotted against her. Each recollection carried a sting, amplified by the pulse of energy flowing from the earth through Amara herself. The trees swayed as if sighing with collective judgment, their branches bending slightly toward the guilty, creating a subtle yet inescapable cage of accountability. Even the sky seemed to join in, clouds swirling above, filtering sunlight into sharp beams that illuminated the villains individually, as if marking them for reflection. A gentle rain began to fall, cold and pure, washing over their shoulders and cascading down their backs, each drop a reminder of cleansing and reckoning. They shivered, not just from the cold but from the unmistakable sense that their misdeeds were now being measured by a force far beyond human law. Amara took another step closer, and the animals subtly shifted their positions, forming a living barrier that left the villains trapped in their own conscience. A deer's hooves stamped softly on the ground, the wind carried a sharp, cutting whistle, and the branches brushed across the guilty, creating a symphony of natural enforcement. They could no longer ignore the power surrounding them, a power rooted in justice, courage, and the deep connection between Amara and the land she embodied. She raised her hands slightly and the soil itself responded. Tiny shoots curled upward, wrapping gently around the feet of the guilty, not to harm, but to remind them of the life they had attempted to destroy. Flowers bloomed in impossible patterns, their colors vivid and overwhelming, a silent message that beauty and truth could not be crushed. The conspirators, trembling and humbled, finally fell to their knees, their eyes wide with the realization that they were no match for the balance restored through Amara's presence. Amara's voice softened but remained resolute. "You will live, but remember, the earth remembers, the spirits watch, and no act of cruelty goes unanswered. Learn from this and honor the life you once sought to destroy." The words resonated through the clearing, carried by wind, soil, and the rustling leaves, etching a permanent lesson into both the minds of the guilty and the memory of the village itself. By the time she stepped back, the air had settled. The conspirators remained kneeling, chastened, aware that their actions had consequences far beyond their understanding. Nature had intervened, enforcing justice subtly but irrevocably, and Amara stood at the center, the embodiment of strength, wisdom, and the unbreakable bond between a pure spirit and the earth that nurtured her. With the conspirators humbled and the village witnessing the power of Amara's rebirth, a deep sense of balance began to settle over the land. The tension that had once lingered like a shadow over the red soil and dense forest started to dissipate. Birds returned to their perches with renewed songs, and the wind, once sharp with warning, now carried a gentle hum, brushing softly against the huts and swaying the tall grasses. The villagers, who had once been complicit in envy or fear, began to gather, hesitant but curious, drawn to the calm authority emanating from Amara. Amara walked through the village slowly, each step purposeful, leaving trails of blooming wildflowers and soft moss in her wake. Children ran after her, eyes wide with awe, sensing that this was not just any woman but a presence imbued with the extraordinary connection between spirit and earth. The elders, who had doubted her or feared the power she embodied, bowed their heads in respect, acknowledging that nature itself had chosen her as its emissary. Even the river seemed to sparkle more brightly, reflecting sunlight that danced over rippling water as if celebrating the restored balance. She spoke gently to the villagers, her voice carrying over the open courtyards, calm yet commanding. "The land we walk upon is alive. Every tree, every stone, every river holds memory and meaning. Respect the soil, honor one another, and act with kindness, for cruelty is never hidden and always returns in some form." Her words struck chords deep within the hearts of the listeners, some for the first time understanding the consequences of envy and malice. Mothers whispered them to their children, passing on the lessons of humility and reverence. The soil itself seemed to respond to her guidance. Flowers that had sprung up around the site of her rebirth remained vibrant, their petals unfurling in patterns that seemed almost deliberate, forming circles of protection and symbols of peace. The villagers noticed small creatures, foxes, rabbits, and birds, gathering near these flowers not in fear but in harmonious observation of Amara. Even the trees leaned slightly toward her presence, their branches creating shaded paths as if to guide villagers toward understanding and reflection. Amara took time to visit each household, offering counsel and reassurance. She showed them how to cultivate the land with care, teaching them to plant in harmony with the seasons and respect the wildlife that shared the village. Her guidance extended beyond agriculture. She shared wisdom about community, fairness, and the importance of maintaining harmony with both human and natural neighbors. Slowly, mistrust and fear began to dissolve, replaced by cooperation and mutual respect. The once jealous rivals, now chastened, joined her willingly, humbled by the evident power and protection that came from living in accordance with the land and its magic. They helped rebuild what had been neglected, planting gardens and tending the soil that had witnessed both cruelty and redemption. Children learned to see the soil not as mere dirt, but as a living entity that honored life and demanded responsibility. At night, Amara would walk beneath the stars, feeling the pulse of the earth beneath her feet. The soil beneath the village glowed faintly in moonlight, a gentle reminder that magic remained, not as a threat, but as a guardian for those who walked with integrity. Villagers sometimes caught glimpses of subtle lights among the fields or shimmered reflections in the rivers, symbols of the earth's ongoing vigilance and respect for purity of heart. Over time, Amara became more than a survivor. She became a guardian and teacher, a living testament to the power of courage, love, and balance. The village flourished under her guidance, its people more mindful of their actions, their relationships, and their environment. The soil, which had once absorbed betrayal and blood, now nourished life and respect, its magic revered by all who walked upon it. Her story, etched into both memory and land, became a living parable. Cruelty meets its consequence, and the earth honors those who act with courage and integrity. With each passing season, the village thrived, a testament to the harmony restored by Amara's unwavering presence, and the mystical soil that would forever protect and guide those who respected it. Word of Amara's incredible rebirth and the magical response of the soil traveled far beyond the village. Travelers who passed through the settlement carried stories of a young woman whose courage could not be buried, whose spirit remained unbroken even in the face of betrayal and cruelty. Merchants, wanderers, and neighboring villagers repeated the tale at markets, around fires, and in the quiet moments of evening gatherings. Each retelling emphasized not only the miraculous nature of her rebirth but also the deep moral lessons that her story carried, echoing across forests, rivers, and hills. The first lesson became clear to everyone who heard it: courage cannot be buried. No matter how severe the punishment, no matter the intention of those who act out of fear, jealousy, or malice, a brave heart finds a way to endure. Amara's unwavering spirit, even in her final moments before her blood met the soil, had sown the seeds of her own resurgence. People began to understand that true courage was not loud or aggressive, but quiet, steady, and resilient. It was in the way she had faced betrayal without losing her sense of self, in the way she had endured pain without giving way to despair. The second lesson was a warning to those who harbor cruelty. Actions born of envy or harm invite consequences. The villagers who had conspired against her could not escape the subtle punishments brought forth by nature itself. The soil, infused with her life force and spirit, had taken on a will of its own, enforcing justice in ways both gentle and terrifying. Flowers sprouted where there had been only dirt and shadow. Animals and winds acted as silent enforcers of morality. Even those who had tried to harm her found themselves humbled, faced with the undeniable truth that cruelty never goes unnoticed. The third lesson was the enduring power of nature to protect the innocent. The magical response of the soil was not merely vengeance. It was a safeguard, a reminder that the earth itself observes, honors, and preserves those with pure hearts. People began to approach the forests and rivers with greater reverence, planting seeds, offering water, and singing to the soil in gratitude. It became customary to leave small offerings, flowers, fruits, or charms, at sacred spots, especially in fields where Amara's rebirth had first occurred. Villagers believed these acts maintained harmony and invited the blessing of protection upon themselves and their families. Over time, songs arose in Amara's honor. Children sang while they played, mothers hummed tunes as they cooked, and elders chanted at ceremonies. Each song told a piece of her story: the bravery that refused to be extinguished, the betrayal that failed to hold power, and the miraculous rebirth that restored balance. Through these songs, the moral of her tale was imprinted on hearts young and old alike. The cadence of drums, the rustle of leaves, and the flow of rivers became part of the narrative, blending nature and story into a living, breathing testament. Villagers also began holding annual gatherings to honor Amara. They decorated the village with flowers, lit small fires, and recited the events that had transpired, ensuring that each generation knew the importance of courage, justice, and harmony. These rituals reinforced the values that Amara's story exemplified: standing firm in the face of adversity, respecting others, and understanding that nature is both a guardian and a witness. Even outsiders who visited were drawn to the village by tales of its mystical soil and the woman whose life had become legend. Scholars, travelers, and storytellers all noted the remarkable reverence in which the villagers held both the earth and Amara's memory. They left with a sense that moral courage, once demonstrated, could ripple outward, influencing not only the immediate community but the wider world as well. In every retelling, one idea remained constant: The spirit of the innocent is sacred, and when it is attacked, the universe itself can rise in defense. Amara's story was no longer just her own. It belonged to the village, the forests, the rivers, and all who walked upon the earth with integrity. The people learned that cruelty might appear powerful for a moment, but courage, justice, and connection to nature endure far beyond any malicious act. By honoring Amara through offerings, songs, and reverence for the soil, the village ensured that the story would live on for generations, a constant reminder that the earth protects the brave, punishes cruelty, and preserves the moral balance of life. Her tale became more than legend. It became a living guide, teaching all who heard it that courage, kindness, and respect for nature are forces that can never be buried. Years after Amara's miraculous rebirth, her story became a cornerstone of village life, whispered from generation to generation and celebrated in both song and ritual. Children gathered around fires, wide-eyed and attentive, as elders recounted the tale with reverent voices. They poured her blood on the soil, but the soil grew a woman like her. Each telling emphasized the unbreakable courage of a young woman who had faced cruelty, betrayal, and death, only to return stronger and more radiant than ever. The narrative carried lessons that transcended time. Bravery could never be buried, cruelty invited consequences, and the earth itself honored those with pure hearts. The soil where Amara's blood had been poured became sacred. Villagers began to refer to it as the Red Heart, a place of reverence where the magic of life and justice intersected. Families would visit the patch of land, leaving small offerings, flowers, grains, water, and handmade charms to honor both the earth and Amara. Farmers discovered that crops planted in or near this soil thrived unusually well, as though nourished by her enduring spirit. Animals, too, seemed drawn to the sacred ground, finding rest and sustenance without fear. The villagers came to believe that the soil carried more than nutrients. It carried a living essence of moral power, capable of protecting the innocent and warning the wicked. Children in particular were enchanted by the story. They would tread carefully near the Red Heart, imagining the miracles that had taken place. Some claimed they saw faint shadows or glowing forms at dusk, hinting at Amara's continued presence. Her story inspired courage even in the youngest hearts. They learned to respect one another, understanding that every act of kindness contributed to the village's balance, while jealousy and cruelty could bring unforeseen consequences. It was more than a story, it was a moral compass, a guide for living in harmony with both people and nature. As years passed, the village incorporated traditions rooted in Amara's legacy. Every year during the planting season, villagers would gather to honor her and the sacred soil. They sang songs that told of her bravery, danced rituals that mimicked the growth of life from earth and blood, and recited prayers for strength, justice, and protection. These ceremonies became central to the village's identity, blending spirituality, ethics, and communal unity. Even travelers from distant settlements sought to witness the rituals, leaving awed by the profound respect and reverence that permeated the land. The story also served as a warning. Villagers recounted the actions of those who had betrayed Amara, the cruelty, envy, and fear that led them to attempt her destruction. Their names, though not shouted in anger, were whispered in cautionary tones, reminding future generations that malicious deeds carry consequences. Children were taught that power should never be used to harm, that jealousy corrupts, and that the earth itself is a witness to human behavior. These lessons, intertwined with the awe of Amara's miraculous rebirth, created a culture of empathy, accountability, and moral vigilance. Cinematic imagery permeated the retellings, making each telling vivid and unforgettable. Storytellers described sunsets spilling gold across the village, illuminating fields of flowers that had sprung from the Red Heart. The soil glowed softly at their feet, radiating a warmth that seemed alive. Villagers imagined Amara standing tall amidst the blooms, her eyes reflecting wisdom and compassion, her presence a living testament to resilience and justice. The interplay of light, earth, and human courage became almost sacred, a visual mnemonic to ensure the story's impact lasted beyond words alone. Over time, Amara's influence extended beyond the immediate village. Neighboring communities heard of the miraculous events and began to incorporate her story into their teachings. Merchants traveling through carried small charms resembling flowers or soil from the sacred patch, believing them to hold protective energy. Scholars of folklore documented the tale, emphasizing its unique blend of human courage and supernatural justice. It became a universal symbol, that life, once wronged, could rise again with strength and dignity, and that nature itself is aligned with fairness. Amara herself became a living legend. Even as she aged, villagers claimed she maintained an aura of vitality and serenity, as if the soil's magic had imbued her not only with survival but with a timeless connection to the land. Children would follow her along forest paths, watching her communicate with animals, tending plants, and guiding the village with a quiet authority. Her voice, soft yet commanding, reminded all who listened that justice is not always loud, and that true power lies in resilience, compassion, and respect for the balance of life. The red heart soil continued to respond to her presence. Flowers bloomed in response to her footsteps, dew collected in unusual patterns, and gentle winds seemed to carry her whispers. Villagers felt reassured that she remained both guardian and teacher, an enduring symbol that goodness could never be destroyed. When disputes arose, people would remind one another of Amara's example, reinforcing fairness, patience, and the protection of those who were vulnerable. Her story became a living law, a moral framework enshrined not only in memory but in daily life. Artists, too, immortalized her legend. Potters crafted figurines of a young woman rising from the soil. Painters depicted sunsets behind flowering fields with Amara's silhouette. Storytellers wove elaborate dances showing her struggle, sacrifice, and triumphant return. Each artwork reinforced the lesson. Even in the face of ultimate betrayal, a pure heart can endure, and nature will respond to honor that integrity. The cultural significance of her tale grew, blending art, music, ritual, and oral tradition into a unified homage. The story reached its cinematic apex in the minds of all who imagined it, a golden sunset casting long shadows across the village, the red heart glowing softly beneath Amara's feet. Flowers bloomed in radiant colors, and gentle winds whispered through the trees, carrying echoes of her courage. Her gaze, calm and unwavering, reminded villagers and travelers alike of the triumph of resilience, justice, and life's persistence. The image was imprinted on minds as a reminder that what is just and pure can never be fully buried, and that the earth itself will rise to protect it. Generations later, children would play near the sacred soil, laughing, planting seeds, and telling one another stories of Amara. Elders would nod knowingly, their eyes reflecting both pride and reverence, teaching that courage, morality, and connection to nature were intertwined and inseparable. The soil became more than land, it became a teacher, a guardian, and a witness to human actions. Through these rituals and teachings, Amara's legacy endured, ensuring that the moral compass she provided would continue to guide the village and beyond. Even as centuries passed, the tale maintained its power. Travelers still spoke of the red heart, of the flowers that bloomed miraculously, and of the woman who rose from blood-soaked earth to embody resilience. Her story inspired laws of kindness, social justice, and environmental reverence, showing that folklore could shape not only hearts but also society. The village thrived, rooted in the principles her life exemplified: courage in the face of cruelty, justice prevailing through unexpected means, and the unbreakable bond between humanity and nature. The cinematic ending, always retold with care, captured the essence of her legacy: the sun setting behind a horizon of flowering fields, the soil glowing softly around Amara's feet, and her figure standing tall, serene, and unyielding. Birds circled above, their wings catching the last rays of light, while a gentle wind carried whispers of her story across the village. The scene embodied triumph, resilience, and harmony, the eternal promise that life, courage, and justice are inseparable. Thus, Amara's tale became immortal. They poured her blood on the soil, but the soil grew. A woman like her was not merely a story, but a living testament to the unyielding strength of the human spirit, the responsiveness of nature to purity and courage, and the enduring power of justice. For generations, villagers and travelers alike would remember her, honor her, and strive to live by the principles her story enshrined, ensuring that her legacy would never fade from the earth she loved and protected.